They were all laughing until they saw me. My brother's champagne froze mid-toast. My mother's face went white. I stepped into the backyard and the air turned colder than the Ohio winter that nearly killed me. I'm Hailey, the girl they said ran away, the girl they buried with a lie while I was lying in a hospital bed, unconscious, nameless, forgotten. They never thought I'd remember, never thought I'd return, but I did, and I brought the truth with me. Before we dive into the story, if you're enjoying these meaningful stories, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss out on more. Now, let's start the story together. The music was soft, some old Eagles song drifting over the lawn, but it might as well have been static. The second I stepped through the side gate, all sound dropped. The laughter, the chatter, the clink of plastic forks against paper plates, gone. The backyard smelled like ribs and fresh-cut grass, the air warm with charcoal and sugar-glazed corn, but none of that registered. Not really. Every pair of eyes had turned. Mine just kept walking. It took 3 full steps for anyone to react. My mother's lemonade cup froze halfway to her lips. She blinked once, then again, like she was trying to clear a bad dream. My father's jaw clenched so tight I saw the muscle twitch. Ethan stood at the far end by the folding table, still holding a champagne flute mid-toast. His voice caught in his throat. He looked like someone had sucker punched him without ever laying a hand. I didn't say anything. Not yet. I moved toward the center of the lawn, past the grill where Uncle Mitch had been flipping burgers. He stepped aside without a word. Someone whispered, "Is that Hailey?" Like I was a rumor made real. Another cousin backed up into a lawn chair, the legs folded in and sent her tumbling. No one laughed. The decorations hadn't changed much over the years. The same red, white, blue bunting, the same lemonade dispensers with floating lemon slices, even the same metal cooler Dad always dragged out on the 4th of July, familiar right down to the fold in the vinyl tablecloth. Only difference was me. I wasn't supposed to be here. I caught Darlene's gaze. Yes, I called her that now, not Mom. Her expression was all thin-lipped denial and forced civility. She gripped the sides of her chair, then stood. Her voice cracked a little. "You look well." I let the silence hang. Just long enough. Then I said it. "You told them I ran away, but I didn't." There was a ripple, like someone had opened a door during a storm, and the wind came howling in. I could see it in their eyes. Panic, confusion, shame. Nobody said anything, not yet, but I could feel it building. Like thunder, still too far to hear but close enough to taste. Ethan's fiancée, a woman I didn't recognize, glanced at him, then back at me. She leaned in and whispered something. He didn't respond, just lowered the glass slowly, fingers trembling. I heard a fork drop, then a cough. The tension in the air could have sliced the picnic table in half. And then, from the far edge of the patio, Aunt Carla stood. Her hands rested lightly on the back of a chair, knuckles white, but her voice was calm. "Let her speak," she said. That was all. The house always smelled like lemon cleaner, the kind that burned your nose and never really masked anything. That night, it clung to everything. The table, the floor, even my uniform. I had just come off a double shift at Frank's Diner, grease still in my hair, feet aching so bad I'd started walking on the outer edges just to ease the pain. But none of that mattered once I stepped into that kitchen. Darlene stood by the counter, arms crossed, staring down at a piece of blackened toast like it had personally offended her. The dish towel in her hand was already twisted into a knot. "You couldn't have called," she said without looking up. "I had tables. We were slammed," I answered, voice low. She turned sharply. "Don't talk back." Her hand shot out and slammed the toaster. Crumbs scattered. "You think just because you work late you can disrespect this family?" I stared at the tile floor, cracked at the corner, still the same one I used to sit on when I was 10, coloring in silence. "I wasn't disrespecting anyone," she scoffed. "You come in here at all hours, you don't help with anything, and you've still got that attitude, just like your father's side." She always said it like it was a curse. Bob sat in the dining room, newspaper held up like a shield. He never said much. I don't even think he read the thing, just used it to disappear. I nodded, even though I wasn't agreeing. I reached for a glass of water, my hand trembling slightly. "You're not going to throw your life away like some diner girl," she added, voice shrill now. "You hear me?" I didn't answer. I just grabbed my hoodie off the hook, the one with the hole in the cuff, and opened the front door. The porch light flickered above me like it wasn't sure if it still worked. I stepped out into the cool air, letting it hit my face, trying not to cry before I reached the sidewalk. The sky was the kind of dark that didn't have stars. Streetlights buzzed in the distance, moths circling like they had nowhere else to go. I walked fast at first, then slowed once I hit the curve past the gas station that had closed when I was in middle school. I told myself I just needed a few blocks, just enough space to breathe. I passed the empty lot where we used to ride bikes. I stepped over a busted soda can and ignored the ache in my legs. My thoughts were too loud anyway, tumbling over each other, about school, about work, about how I never seemed to be enough. And then it happened. A sound, tires on gravel, headlights, fast, too fast. I turned just as the light hit me. There was no time. I didn't even scream. Just the flash of a red varsity E on a hoodie behind the wheel, a glimpse of wide eyes and an open mouth like someone was shouting something I couldn't hear. And then the world tilted. I felt the impact before I registered what had hit me. My body lifted off the ground, then hit it again. Hard. Gravel scraped my palms. My head cracked against something, maybe the curb. I don't know. Everything went white, then black, like someone had yanked the cord on the universe. The last thing I remembered was the cold, deep and immediate. It crept through my jeans, into my shoes, up my spine, the kind of cold that didn't just sit on your skin but settled in your bones. And then nothing. No voices, no hands reaching for me, no breaks, no apology, just silence. When I woke up, I didn't know my name. I didn't know where I was. And worst of all, I didn't know if anyone was even looking. For 3 weeks, I was no one, just a girl with a tube in her arm and a bandage over her left eyebrow. The chart at the end of my bed read Jane Doe in tidy handwriting. They didn't know who I was, and for a while, neither did I. The room was quiet, too white, too clean. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a pale blue wash across the ceiling. The sheets smelled like bleach and something sharper, maybe antiseptic. I lay still, unsure of what parts of my body even worked. A heart monitor beeped steadily beside me. I stared at the wall and waited for a memory that didn't come. Nurse Linda was the first face I learned to trust. She had warm eyes and a soft voice that never rose above the hum of the machines. She spoke gently, never asked too many questions. She called me sweetheart without sounding fake. She brought my meals on a lemon-yellow tray and once slipped me an extra pudding cup with a wink. "You were found unconscious off Route 12, she told me one morning, adjusting the blanket near my feet. "No ID, no phone. You've been out a while." "How long is a while?" I croaked. My throat felt like sandpaper. She hesitated. "About 3 weeks." No one had come. The social worker tried to reach someone listed under emergency contacts. She made the call in the hallway, thinking I couldn't hear her, but I caught the tone of her voice when she returned. Not pity, not surprise, just resignation. "They said, you were unstable," she said carefully, placing a paper on the table beside my bed. "They're not open to contact." I didn't say anything. I didn't have the words. It was like learning to breathe through wet cotton. Days passed. I learned how to sit up without my head spinning. I walked a few shaky steps to the window, watching snow collect on the ledge. I memorized the schedule of the nurses, the beeping rhythms of the IV machines, the way the janitor hummed gospel songs under his breath every time he passed room 212. Each evening, a small box TV played whatever the antenna could catch, mostly old game shows or local news, One night, as I chewed a spoonful of mashed potatoes, the theme to Jeopardy gave way to a commercial break. Then came a song, soft, familiar, haunting. Can I handle the seasons of my life? I froze. Fleetwood Mac, Landslide. I didn't know how I knew that, but I did. Suddenly, something cracked. Not in the room, in me. There was the sound of a door slamming, the smell of cinnamon toast, slightly burnt, a flash of a woman's hand slapping a plate down on a table, the clink of rings against ceramic, and then, louder than anything, a voice. You're pathetic, Hailey. My name. The name rolled through my mind like thunder across an open field. Hailey. I clutched the edge of the bed, breath shallow. More images came, quicker now, jagged and hot. Headlights, a street, cold air biting at my face, a hoodie, the color red, and a crash. The monitor beside me beeped erratically. Linda rushed in, voice calm but urgent. Are you in pain? No, I whispered. I remember something. She stilled. My hands were trembling, but I didn't try to stop them. I looked at the lemon tray on my lap, now half empty. Everything else had blurred, but one thing had come into focus. I know who I am. For the first time, I wasn't a blank page, and then, like lightning through fog, I saw him, behind the wheel, a red varsity E across his chest. Ethan. They held a candlelight vigil in the church basement while I was learning how to hold a spoon without dropping it. A nurse told me later, offhandedly, while adjusting my compression socks, said it made the local paper. A photo of my mother, eyes red, holding a candle like it meant something. I'd been in the rehab center 3 weeks by then, the kind of place with vinyl floors that stick slightly when you walk too slow. Everything smelled faintly of disinfectant and leftover mashed potatoes. My room was at the end of a quiet hallway where the radio from the nurse's desk never quite turned off. Easy listening during the day, gospel at night. Nurse Linda still came by sometimes, even though her shift had technically ended at the hospital. She'd bring crossword puzzles and lemon cough drops. She didn't say much about the family calls anymore, but I could feel the weight of what she didn't say. Sometimes silence tells you more than words. One afternoon, as the sun hit the window just right, casting golden bars across my blanket, the social worker returned, clipboard in hand, mouth tight. I called them again, she said gently. Just one more time. I nodded, though I already knew. She said, you were always unstable, that you left in the middle of the night and wouldn't speak to anyone, that she hoped you'd find peace. Peace, I repeated flatly. She also said they didn't want contact. Again. That word stuck. Again. I didn't cry. I just stared at the corner of the blanket where a thread had begun to unravel. They weren't grieving me. They were rewriting me, erasing the real parts and replacing them with something easier to carry. No, Carla said, her voice cutting through like a blade. This is exactly the place. I pulled out my phone. It was already cued. I hit play. Bob's voice crackled over the speaker, slurred, quiet but clear. She's gone. Keep your mouth shut. You were drinking and I can't protect you if this gets out. No one moved. No one breathed. Darlene's hand flew to her mouth. Ethan stepped back like he'd been slapped. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." I looked around at all of them, their stiff collars, their plastic cups, their desperate attempts at normal. "This isn't a reunion," I said softly. "This is a reckoning." And then I turned and walked away, my back straight, my voice echoing behind me. The apartment isn't much, but it's mine. Second floor, corner unit, slightly tilted floorboards that creak when I cross from the couch to the tiny kitchen. My books are stacked in uneven piles, some acting as end tables, others simply leaning against the wall like they're resting too. The thrift store couch has a floral pattern that looks like something from 1992, and the window overlooks a parking lot with just enough trees to make me feel like I can breathe. It's early 2024 now. I spend my mornings in class, online lectures and discussion boards, and afternoons shelving returns at the local bookstore. It smells like dust and coffee and old paper, and on slow days I curl up behind the front counter with a paperback and a quiet mind. There's no one shouting in the other room, no one commenting on how late I get home. Just silence, and the hum of a life I built, one small choice at a time. Carla sends postcards every couple of weeks, photos from the farmer's market, thrift finds, a lemon bar recipe scrawled in blue pen. She never says much. She doesn't have to. Her presence always came without noise or condition, and it still does. One afternoon, I check the mail and find a plain white envelope, no return address. Inside, a check and a torn piece of notebook paper. I should have protected you. Dad. I stare at it for a long time, not because I believe it changes anything, but because it confirms what I've always known. He knew. They all did. And still, they let the lie live longer than I was allowed to. I don't cash the check. I frame the note, not for closure, but as proof that even cowards, in their quietest moments, understand what they've done. I sit by the window as rain taps gently against the glass, a soft rhythm that reminds me of the machines from the hospital. The air smells like laundry detergent and lemon, Carla's influence, even here. My laptop rests on the coffee table, papers spread out around me. A new class module waits to be submitted. I'll get to it. On the shelf beside the window sits a photo frame. Inside is a picture of the four of us. Me, Ethan, Darlene, Bob. I'm 12 in it, grinning with a popsicle in hand. I burned the edges, just slightly. Just enough to remember it wasn't all fake, but never let myself forget what came after. An email pings in my inbox from an old classmate. The subject line reads, "Is it true?" I don't open it. I don't need to explain. This life doesn't belong to them. I close the notebook I've been journaling in since the hospital, the final page now filled with my handwriting. I run my hand over the cover and say my name out loud, quiet but sure. I'm still here. No fanfare, no applause, just me. And this life, it's mine, every bit of it. I used to think silence was safety, but I've learned that silence can bury you just as deep as any lie. Sitting by that second-floor window, whispering my name out loud, I didn't need a crowd. I just needed to hear it for myself. Sometimes, families don't lose us through tragedy. They lose us through the stories they choose to tell and the truths they choose to ignore. But healing doesn't always come with noise. It often shows up in small ways. A warm hug, a lemon-scented scarf, a life quietly rebuilt one peaceful morning at a time. If this story stirred something in you, I invite you to share your thoughts or a moment you reclaimed for yourself. After all, the quiet we fight for is often the one we need most. That evening, I pushed my wheelchair down the hall for dinner. The trays were already lined up: meatloaf, green beans, peach cups. I chose a seat by the window and peeled the lid off the pudding. The sun had dipped low when a shadow moved across the floor. I looked up. Aunt Carla stood at the doorway holding a bakery bag and a folded piece of fabric in her hand. For a second, I thought I was hallucinating. She walked slowly, unsure, then set the bag down and knelt in front of me. "Hailey," she said, voice trembling, "you're really here." She opened her arms. I didn't hesitate. It was the first real hug I'd had since the accident. Warm, full, real. I didn't know how much I'd needed it until I felt it. "I brought lemon poppy seed muffins," she whispered. "Your favorite. And this..." She unfolded the cloth. It was my old scarf, the one I used to wear in the 3rd grade, faded pink with frayed edges. The moment I touched it, memories flooded back. Laughing in her kitchen, Carla brushing flour from my nose, late-night talks on her back porch about everything and nothing. We sat together for a long time, just breathing. Then slowly, she told me the story. "They said you were troubled, that you'd refused help, that you were embarrassed to be part of the family and stormed off." I looked at her. "And they believed that?" She shook her head. "Some did. I didn't." But no one wanted to ask too many questions. Your mother said talking about it would just make it worse. I let that sit. Worse. As if pretending I didn't exist was somehow better. Carla reached across the table, her hand warm over mine. I have a guest room. It's not fancy, but it's yours if you want it. I didn't pause. Yes. And in that small word was everything I hadn't been given. Choice, voice, place. As we packed my few things later that night, Carla folded the scarf carefully and handed it to me. "You're not a ghost," she said. "You never were." I held it close, breathing in the faint scent of lemon and flower. They hadn't buried me with dirt. They'd buried me with silence. And I wasn't coming back to be quiet. I was coming back to be seen. They'd strung fairy lights across the trees like they were decorating a movie set. White folding chairs dotted the lawn, some already stained with lemonade and fingerprints. A long plastic table groaned under the weight of BBQ ribs, deviled eggs, and trays of cookies from the grocery store bakery. Someone had even added mason jars with floating tea lights, like ambiance could hide rot. From outside the gate, I watched for a moment. It looked the same as it always had. The smell of charcoal, the sound of clinking ice, Ethan's laugh cutting through the noise, like it always did when he was trying too hard. But something had changed. Me. I stepped forward. No announcement. No fanfare. Just the sound of my footsteps on dry grass. Ethan stood near the grill, mid-toast, a glass of champagne raised toward the crowd. "To family," he said. "To love and—" He froze. Someone gasped. A fork clattered to the ground. A kid asked, "Who's that lady?" Darlene's head snapped around. She blinked once as if trying to refocus, then her mouth tightened. "You shouldn't be here," she said under her breath. I met her eyes. "But I am." I didn't stop walking until I reached the center of the yard. The guests parted slowly, murmuring. Some looked confused, others deeply uncomfortable. Carla stood near the back, arms crossed, watching, not interfering. I looked around the circle of faces. People who had once handed me birthday cards, passed me potato salad, prayed with my family like we were whole. Now they stared like they didn't know what to do with the living ghost in front of them. I took a breath. "You told them I ran away, that I left in the night, but that's not what happened." Silence. Even the cicadas seemed to stop. "I was in a hospital. For weeks. I had no ID, no visitors, no name, just tubes and stitches and a nurse named Linda, who held my hand when the nightmares got bad." Darlene opened her mouth, but I lifted a hand. "Let me finish." I turned toward Ethan. "You remember, don't you? The varsity hoodie, the party, the drinking?" His face turned a shade paler. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, I do," I said, louder now, "because I remember the headlights. I remember the red E on your chest. I remember the look on your face when you realized it was me." Guests looked between us. Someone shifted on their folding chair. A cousin whispered something to her husband. The air thickened. Bob stepped forward. "This isn't the place."